Hello students. Now in this video we will learn about the structure of human heart. So the human heart is situated almost in the middle line in the thoracic cavity between the lungs. Its lower conical part its lower conical part is tilted to the left. The heart, the human heart, is enclosed in a membranous sac, and this sac is called pericardium, and this pericardium is formed of two layers. One is called fibrous pericardium. This layer prevents excessive expansion of heart, and another layer is called serous pericardium, and this serous pericardium, it has two thin sublayers. One is called parietal layer and another is known as visceral layer. Now in between these parietal and visceral layers of serous pericardium, there is the pericardial space filled with pericardial fluid. This pericardium protects the heart from injury, from mechanical shocks, and against friction. And the pericardial fluid, which is present in the pericardial space, keeps the heart moist. The human heart is four-chambered. It consists of two auricles. This is the right auricle or right atria, and this is the left auricle or left atria. So it consists of two auricles and two ventricles. This is the right ventricle and this is the left ventricle. Now auricles are thin-walled chambers separated by a thin interauricular septum. That means in between this right auricle and the left auricle there is the separating membrane known as interauricular septum or interatrial septum. Lying in the septum is an oval depression, and that is called fossa ovalis. Right atrium, this one, the right atrium is a thin-walled chamber and is larger than the left atrium. You can see the right atrium is larger than the left atrium. It has comparatively thin and less muscular wall and receives opening of superior vena cava. This is the superior vena cava. This one is the superior vena cava. So it receives openings of superior vena cava, inferior vena cava. This one is inferior. So from here it mainly moves inwardly and then it comes to this part. So that is the opening of the inferior vena cava. Right atrium opens into right ventricle. It opens into right ventricle by right atrioventricular aperture. By right atrioventricular aperture. Right atrium receives two large veins, as I already mentioned. One is superior vena cava and another is inferior vena cava. The superior vena cava brings deoxygenated blood from the head and from the upper part of the body, and the inferior vena cava brings deoxygenated blood from the lower part of the body. Next, we'll talk about the left atrium. Now, another thing I just want to mention you, that opening of the inferior vena cava here, this is the opening of the inferior vena cava, this is the opening of the inferior vena cava, is guarded by eustachian valve. So it is guarded by one valve, and the name of this valve, eustachian valve, or it is valve of, called as valve of Eustachius. Opening of superior vena cava is without any valve. Left atrium is smaller than right atrium and has thicker walls. It has openings of 4 pulmonary veins. You can see the pulmonary veins, 4 pulmonary veins. This is number 1, this is number 2, this is number 3, this is number 4. 4 pulmonary veins. So it has openings. Here it is the opening of these 4 pulmonary veins, and these are not guarded by valves. And this left atrium opens into the left ventricle by left atrioventricular aperture, and it is guarded by a bicuspid valve or mitral valve. So both the atrioventricular valves, that means tricuspid valve and bicuspid valves, allow blood to flow from atria into respective ventricles and prevent blood flowing in the reverse direction. Now, in the ventricular part, ventricles, right ventricles, left ventricles, these are thick-walled lower chamber of heart. These are separated from each other by an obliquely placed interventricular septum. The right ventricle pumps deoxygenated blood to pulmonary arteries. This is the pulmonary artery. To pulmonary artery, which supply blood to the lungs alone. Whereas the left ventricle, that means from this part, left ventricle pumps oxygenated blood. Left ventricle pumps oxygenated blood to aorta. This is the largest blood vessel which supplies blood to all the body parts. The left ventricle is larger and its walls are about 3 times, you can see the wall, these are the muscular wall of the left ventricle, 3 times thicker than the right ventricle, because left ventricle has to pump blood into vessels supplying blood to the entire body. The left atrium, which I already mentioned, that receives 2 pairs of pulmonary veins, one from each side. These bring oxygenated blood from lungs and have no valves. From the right ventricle arises pulmonary trunk, pulmonary artery, actually it is divided into left pulmonary trunk and right pulmonary trunk, or you can also say it is the pulmonary aorta. It carries deoxygenated blood to lungs, and from the left ventricle arises systemic aorta or aortic arch. And this aortic arch or systemic aorta supplies oxygenated blood oxygenated blood to all the part of the body except the lungs. Now, these are the blood vessels which are associated with the heart. But heart, it also has its own blood vessel. That blood vessels are giving oxygenated blood to the heart muscular walls. So a pair of coronary arteries arise from systemic aorta and supply oxygenated blood to the heart muscular walls. And a series of coronary veins collect deoxygenated blood from the heart wall. The arteries and veins of the heart or the heart wall form the coronary circulation. So it is about the structure of human heart and its associated blood vessels. Thank you.